time for a review of the newspapers this morning with Dr. Constance Ikoku joining us. Good morning, Dr. Constance.
Good morning, Nkechi, Adesua, and Ndi. How are you this morning?
Good morning to you.
Morning.
Okay, to look at the papers today, we have Emmanuel Azike. He is a columnist with the Vanguard newspaper and former political editor. We'll begin with this day newspaper. FJ summons TCN NEC to emergency meeting over incessant electricity grid collapse. Oando backs NUMPRC's plan to grow crude oil output by additional 1 million barrels per day. Obi laments on ending bloodshed, appeals to security agencies to halt killings. Wale Edun, for reforms to succeed, vulnerable populations must be protected. Bala Mohammed, PDP will resist any attempt to turn Nigeria to one-party state. Bala Mohammed is also the governor of Bauchi State. He says the party will ensure the forces of division among them do not succeed. Emmanuel, let's bring you in here. Is Bala Mohammed blowing hot hair? They really have real issues in PDP.
I think he's blowing hot air. Exactly a week ago or so, his senator from Bauchi State, Senator Abdul Nengi, moved a motion for a vote of confidence on Senator Godswill Akpabio as the president of the Senate. And I didn't hear him blow any hot air at that time. And you also recall that it's a known fact that a number of PDP chiefs, including PDP governors, some of them are championing the second-term aspiration of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Of course, I can easily call out one. Governor Simi Fubara has openly declared that Rivers State, with him as governor, will be championing the return of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu. So the saying that the saying that they will prevent Nigeria from descending into a one-party state, I think it's not an issue. Nigeria is already a one-party state.
Let's bring it in here. The NEC meeting has been postponed to November. It was supposed to hold October 24th. This meeting is crucial and needs to be held. This postponement, I think, does it, stop the PDP from going down the hill? They have to change the trajectory the party is on at the moment.
Now, they postponed the NEC to November 28th. So when I checked, I saw that the election I think it's in Ondo State, is coming up on the 16th. I think 16th November, if I'm correct. So I'm wondering, the 16th, well, if it comes up 16th November, that then it's okay. They're trying to put their heads together for the election. And the last note of Emmanuel is Nigerians won't like it when he just declared that Nigeria is already a one-party state. That's not what we know. I was going to say that Bala Mohammed, Bauchi governor, seems to be the PDP member who is even raising dust, who is even talking. And, away from whether it's a one-party state or not, the problem, the challenge here for the country is how this affects the Nigerian on the street. If APC railroads other parties and becomes the only party, that means anything they want to do, they can do it, and that's dangerous for democracy. Okay,
The Guardian this morning, lost billions, why government's youth empowerment efforts are failing. The Guardian newspaper. Disco's planned meter phase-out may worsen Nigeria's 7 million gap as FCCPC intervenes. TCN urges calm as 40 cable throws north into darkness. FG ASU, can public varsities afford another shutdown? FG seeks IMF's help as flooding, oil output crisis, damping outlook. This comes as the International Monetary Fund dampened Nigeria's growth outlook for the second time due to weaker than expected activity in the first half. The growth outlook is now 2.9%. This was linked to recent flooding that washed away farmlands and displaced thousands of people. This sounds bleak, very bleak, Emmanuel.
Well, it's very bleak, and Comparatively to growth forecast within the sub-region, Nigeria is below. I think within the sub-region, the projection is about 3.2%, but Nigeria is now 2.9%. The IMF, in its World Economic Outlook, WEO, blamed this on flooding and the failure of Nigeria to rev up its oil production. Flooding is there, and we have been saying these things, that the issue of flooding in Nigeria is not just natural, it is man-made. It is the failure of successive administrations to construct the dam that is required to check the flooding that comes from the river in Cameroon. And coming to oil production, just 2 days ago, you remember the NUPRC launched a program to boost oil production by 1 million barrels. And I must tell you, I was excited with one of the ministers there, President Henikin Lokbobiri, openly challenging them that was a very lackluster objective. You recall that Nigeria had produced 2.4 million barrels, 2.7 million barrels in years past during the Obasanjo administration. Now, what we are producing is said to be in the region of between 1.3 to 1.5 million. Why is this? Oil industry sources say that it's because a number of our oil wells are capped, and even the 1.5 million we produce, half of it goes to the joint venture partners, and a significant proportion has already been sold by the previous APC administration. So there is really nothing. So what the government should do, there should be a serious effort by the Minister of Petroleum, that is Asiwaju Bola Tinubu, and his Minister of State to jack up oil production seriously. There should be serious effort to jack up production to 2.4, 2.5, possibly even 4 million barrels per day. We have the potential, we have the capacity, but the issue is that investments in the sector and the unexplained capping of several of our oil wells, I think that has to be reconsidered.
Nkechi, so the finance minister is in Washington, D.C. They're having meetings, and he has called for a global financial architecture to help developing countries navigate these times. I mean, but when you look at it, truly, no one is coming to bail you out. You have to find a way out of all of this, Nkechi.
No one is coming to bail us out. You put it very apt. No matter what sort of positions that the IMF even puts Nigeria on, we have to bail ourselves out. On a positive look, IMF says it expects Nigeria to pick up slightly next year, potentially hitting 3.2%. But this is all based on assumptions that our oil production will be back on track and will tackle some of the supply chain shocks. But I think more importantly, like Emmanuel mentioned, this recent devastating floods that we saw this year, displacing over 200,000 people in 28 states, is just reminiscent of what has been happening. 2022 was a disaster, and yet we're here again, barely prepared. And I think the most important thing is, how do we prevent Nigeria going down this path again when we experience these shocks, rather than how do we survive after these shocks, or how do we react to these shocks. We have to be more proactive when it comes, because like the IMF director Georgieva always says, COVID-19 is not the only shock that we're going to get. Right. COVID-19 just basically proved to the world that anything can happen, and we always have to have those buffers. Okay,
Punch newspaper. PDP crisis, anti-Damagu plot thickens as NEC meets Thursday. Nigeria still borrowing amid high debt costs, according to IMF. Federal government bans cooking gas export over rise in prices. How Bobrisky spent night in FCID female cell. LG Autonomy FJ plans sanctions against defaulting states. The Attorney General of the Federation says there's no going back on plans to implement Supreme Court ruling on local government autonomy. At least 164 local government areas have not conducted elections. Indications are that by end of October, those that have failed to conduct these elections will have their allocations seized. That's what the federal government is planning. Sounds like a plausible next step, doesn't it, Emmanuel? Seize the allocations.
Well, I must first of all start by saying that the initiative by the Tinubu administration to jack up and to revive democracy at the grassroots is one of the best achievements this administration has had. But then that achievement is contrasted by constitutional provisions, because the Constitution is explicit that there shall be a state and local government joint account. I think the president was probably in between, was caught between the devil and the deep blue sea on how to go about on how to go about the issue of giving local government funds directly to the local governments. Now, this effort to seize the funds that meant the eight states, mark you, 8 states have not conducted local government elections. It flows from the Supreme Court judgment of last July upon the initiative of the Attorney General of the Federation, who initiated a court action to ensure that for the abolition of that state and local government joint accounts. I think there is a constitutional crisis. There is a constitutional problem because, you see, in Anambra State, they're already trying to reinvent the wheel concerning that, as concerning the interpretation of that judgment. They're already reversing it, and that is leading to a problem. So I think whatever it is, the governors, I think there should be a political solution to this, just as we had in the onshore-offshore dichotomy. The president should sit down with the governors and use moral persuasion to lead the governors to heed the letters of the Constitution and, of course, the Supreme Court judgments.
Oh, okay, that's why let's look at the states that are yet to conduct elections. Here we have Ondo, Oshu, Katsina, Cross River, Nasarawa, Abia, Ogun, and Zamfara. One wonders what the excuse is for failing to obey the Supreme Court order. In fact, it says that some states' governors are opposing this autonomy, actually, at this one.
So the thing is, looking at this story, some excuses were given by these states why they have not actually conducted the local government elections, because prior to the judgment of the Supreme Court that came in July, some of them had already put dates for these elections ahead. So we're likely to see these states conduct their elections beyond the October deadline that they have. But I want just to react to what Emmanuel said earlier. The problem is, initially we've seen presidents such as former President Muhammadu Buhari who tried to do this via executive order. What the President Bola Tinubu administration has done is to interpret the law, interpret the Constitution. So the Constitution says this, let's take it up, let's test the law. And it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court gave that landmark judgment in July, affirming the financial autonomy of the local government areas in Nigeria. So are the governors saying that they are going to rewrite the judgment of the apex court? Is that what we are saying? Also, it's not also a fiat. This ruling also said that the Accountant General of the Federation has to pay the local government allocations directly to their accounts. So if these elections have not been conducted, it is very simple. It's a simple equation. You did not hold the elections, you did not get your money. So this is the Supreme Court interpretation of this matter. I don't think it's a fiat, and I don't think that there should be any contradictions to it. But what we have seen is that old habits die hard in this country, and that's the problem.
Okay. They want to maintain the status quo as it favors them.
Right. Let's look at Daily Sun. Adamawa, Anambra, Ebonyi, dump suit challenging legality of EFCC, ICPC, NFIU. No explanation was given to this. We only know that they have simply withdrawn or filed a notice of withdrawal. The states contend that the law setting up the Economic and Financial Crisis Commission was never intended to be applicable throughout the country. Again, Emmanuel, this is testing the law in court.
It's testing the law, not just the law, the federation. This court action by the states aims to test the existence of Nigeria as a federation. You remember that this, and Kogi State is leading this endeavor, essentially because of its former governor, who is being tried or prosecuted by the EFCC. They are saying that the EFCC should not apply to the states. The operation of the EFCC should not apply to the states. And this has some political dimensions. You remember, like a state in Kano now, Kano State wants to try the immediate past governor, but the EFCC seems to be buckling on that in that direction. So the states now have not taken up the matter to seek an independent platform, independent channel to try corruption cases. But mark you, I do not agree with what the states are saying, because they are relying on the United Nations Convention. The EFCC law is a landmark law. I do not think personally that there is any fault with it. I think this is more of a political exercise by the state governors to seek their own relevance and independence from corruption.
All right, let's look at the international headlines. Daily Graphic from Ghana. Parliament adjourns indefinitely. Government business suffers. There's a standoff in the Ghana Parliament after the Speaker declared 4 seats vacant following the defection of the members to another party. Now they went to the court, and the Supreme Court ruled that the Speaker has to hold this decision pending the determination of the suit. It sounds so Nigerian, rushing to court to stall everything. Let's move on to Citizen, a newspaper from South Africa. 4 in 5 Joburg bridges unsafe. 12 bridges are categorized as very poor, with 4 closed as bad leadership is blamed. The report says there's imminent danger of structural failure, as 4 are already closed. This report highlights the failure in government, which at least can be addressed now that it's come to light. It also says that the problem is not there is no money. The problem is that they have leadership issues. Then the Times newspaper this morning, Met Chiefs call to shield armed police from trials following the trial and acquittal of police officer that killed Chris Kaba. UK's most senior police chief has said there needs to be exemption of police officers from prosecution when they're involved in shootings such as this. He said that such cases will, prevent or, dampen the morale of police officers. Emmanuel, do you agree with this suggestion? He's saying that this is quite controversial in light of the fact that it's the life of someone involved.
I do not agree with him. Any police officer that goes outside procedures in shooting or killing somebody should be brought to trial. Whereas it's just like the immunity clause we have in Nigeria, where governors or the president can do anything they like. I think police officers in the UK should be under regulations, and they should be under regulations. I do not agree with him in that respect.
Well, the report also says that it was found that the Kaba was a member of a gang, but that shouldn't.
That's no excuse.
That's no excuse to mow down someone on the streets. Let's look at the Washington Post. Early voting data shows Republicans' reversal appears to be paying off. So following former President Trump's decision to embrace early voting, a lot of Republicans are out there and voting early. And so this has boosted his campaign. But at the end of the day, it's a turnaround, but it looks like it's still close to call, Andy.
Yeah, still very tight. We did talk with a Republican, a Nigerian in America this morning in Dallas particularly, who was trumping for Trump, We'll see how it goes, but there's been talk back and forth, Trump calling Kamala lazy, and Kamala saying Trump is unhinged, danger to democracy, and unfit to serve. And the president himself saying that people are telling him outside that you must win because Trump is dangerous to democracy. So we see how it plays out. It's tight. I mean, a little bit of margin. Kamala Harris in the lead, but it's very tight. And like Obama said, it's going to be a very tight race, reason why Democrats need to get out there like he's urging them to go and vote.
Yeah, definitely it's going to be an interesting election. It will be fiercely fought, and Kechi, won't it?
It definitely will be fiercely fought. Donald Trump, also the Vice President Kamala Harris, they are not letting down any bit of vote that they can grab. We had just heard Donald Trump talking about they need to make this election as big or very, very big or too big to rig. That's what he said. But I just wanted to make a quick comment on the story coming out of the UK where they are trying to make it harder to put police officers on trial. I think on the one hand, you have officers who feel vulnerable fearing investigations, reluctant to take actions in critical situations. On the other hand, you have obviously a very worried public, especially when it comes to minority communities that feel disenfranchised and feel unsafe. Now, the balance between, excuse me, protecting those who protect the public, us, and holding them accountable is very fragile. If you then tilt it too much to one direction, we risk losing trust in institutions that are supposed to protect the public. It's a very dicey situation.
I think the reason why, for me, the US election, why it's so interesting and millions and hundreds of millions of people watch it around the world is because of what they practice. This sort of, party and democracy that they have. Now we are all watching the US election.
It's not democracy, and I was surprised.
Well, we are all watching this election. 2 weeks to go, 14 days to go. It takes me back to the first headline, which I didn't have an opportunity to talk about, the PDP issue and the PDP raising the concerns or raising the alarms.
We're almost out of time at this one.
Raising the alarms over one-party system in Nigeria. We cannot overemphasize the role of parties and stability of democracy. And that's what we're seeing in the US election, Dr. Ikoko.
All right, we'll call it a day here. Thank you so much, Dr. Constance Ikoku and Emmanuel Aziken, for being here early, arising to join us on Daybreak. That's it. The morning show is next on the line. I am Ndi Amugo, thanking you for watching.
And I am Nkechi Nana. Goodbye.
Let's do this again tomorrow. I am Adesua Omoruan. Good morning.